sometimes a political image and how very far it misses the mark actually helps us understand political substance. In our fourth story on the countdown, one of the oddities from Senator McCain's acceptance speech last night may have been a bizarre misstep. There it is, Senator McCain, right after the initial thank yous were complete, standing before what appeared to be a green screen for the first 5 minutes of his speech. That green screen recalled, of course, a very poorly received speech he gave back in June, which used a lime green backdrop that gave the senator a rather sickly pallor. But as the audience inside the Excel Convention Center last night could see, and the TV audience only glimpsed, that was a green lawn behind Senator McCain, along with a mansion-like structure. One of his many houses, perhaps? No. Turns out the image is the Walter Reed Middle School in North Hollywood, California. But since it seems unlikely that the McCain camp would show some random school during their candidate's most important speech ever, inveterate bloggers are suggesting that the campaign actually meant to show this. That would be Walter Reed Medical Center. That, of course, would also be baffling since McCain was not talking about veterans during that part of his speech. And since, as veterans groups have pointed out today, Senator McCain has repeatedly voted against increased funding for military and VA hospitals. The McCain campaign called NBC's Andrea Mitchell today, saying that the Walter Reed Middle School image was simply a generic photo, like others used, and it had no specific meaning. It was just clip art, essentially. Joining us now is Paul Rieckhoff, the founder and executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and the author of Chasing Ghosts, a memoir of his service in Iraq. Hi, Paul. It's good to see you.
Hey, Rachel. Good to be with you.
So, on Tuesday night, the RNC ran a patriotic video that used fake soldiers, actors,
right,
and a staged military funeral. Now we're trying to make sense of the Walter Reed Middle School backdrop. What do you make of all this?
I was at the convention last night with a few other vets, and we were trying to figure it out ourselves. We thought it might be one of Senator McCain's 7 houses. But clearly now we see it's a slip-up. I think it was sloppy. It's pretty pathetic. And I think, honestly, that backdrop, whether it was Walter Reed Middle School or the actual Walter Reed, that's about as close as Senator McCain got to veterans' issues last night. He didn't mention the word veteran once in his entire speech, didn't talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, didn't talk about veterans funding. And I think he really forgot where he came from last night. He had an epic, historic opportunity to talk about not just his service as a POW, but what he faced as a veteran coming home and how he was going to learn from that and institute policies and procedures and resources that would help a new generation of veterans coming home. So I was very disappointed. I think veterans around the country were disappointed.
We did, very unexpectedly last night, see an Iraq vet and activist disrupt the start of Senator McCain's speech, holding up a sign that said, McCain votes against vets. Before he was dragged out of the hall, he yelled that McCain should be asked about his voting record. Do you think that McCain is starting to pay a price for his not-so-great record on veterans issues?
Definitely, definitely. He called that veteran ground noise and static. That guy's name was Adam Kokesh. He's a sergeant in the Marine Corps with Iraq Veterans Against the War. And he's calling Senator McCain out on his voting record. I've been on this show for a few years talking about the GI Bill. We told America that if Senator McCain was on the wrong side of the GI Bill, it was going to hang around his neck throughout this election. That's exactly what's happening now. And I also want to note, Kokesh was only one of 2 veterans who actually got to speak at all during the convention that had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was one other guy, Charlie Summers, who was a Republican congressman running for Congress in Maine, who spoke. On the Democratic side, the week before, they had Tammy Duckworth, they had Patrick Murphy, and they had a number of vets from Iraq and Afghanistan who spoke on Thursday night. So it seemed like a deliberate attempt by the RNC not to put Iraq and Afghanistan vets out in front.
And to have one of the 2 guys getting to speak at the Republican National Convention, having to speak essentially from the rafters while getting dragged out of the room, that says something. Bob Woodward has a new book out on Monday that's about the most recent stages of the Iraq War. And in the book, he says that the reduction in violence in Iraq was partly a result of the surge, but it was also because of the Mahdi Army ceasefire, because of the Sunni awakening, and because of, and this is the new part that we didn't know about before the book, improved spying techniques, essentially, on the insurgency by the U.S. military. When John McCain talks about Iraq, he essentially exclusively talks about the surge. That's all he wants to talk about when it comes to the war. Do you think that our presidential politics on the Iraq war are too simple, that they just don't take account of the complexity and reality of the war?
Absolutely. It's become so narrow, and actually there was a New York Times piece about it today by Colonel Nagel, who's written extensively on counterinsurgency operations and what we would need to do to effectively pull out. Senator McCain acts like the surge is the silver bullet that's going to solve everything. and he wants to take credit for that being victory. And I would urge him and everyone else, don't claim victory just yet. I think Harry Reid was too early when he said things were done and it was over. And I think Senator McCain is jumping on this and showing some political opportunism, quite frankly, by saying it's all won and it's his fault. Victory has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. And I think the Republicans are quick to jump on this and try to get you to vote that they have won the war and therefore you should vote with them and McCain's the guy who won it. And I think that's a very simplistic understanding. It's going to come back to bite him in the next few weeks.
Yeah, especially when you realize that the postscript to that is pay no attention to the 140,000 Americans still there indefinitely.
Exactly.
One last question on the Woodward book, and that is his, I think, shocking quote from President Bush. Woodward asks Bush why the surge is going to be 5 brigades when the Pentagon had said they could only spare 2 for that sort of escalation. And Bush's response is, okay, I don't know this. I'm not in these meetings, you'll be happy to hear, because I got other things to do. Any reaction to that?
It's disgusting. It's really disappointing to hear that the commander-in-chief doesn't know how many brigades are going over and isn't involved in those conversations. I think that that's what we need to have the political leadership involved in. Exactly how many brigades, what is our strategy, and how is it going to be implemented? That's what we need Senator McCain and Senator Obama to show that they're going to be involved in going forward. Whether it's moving troops to Afghanistan, pulling troops out of Iraq, they need to be in the room. And if you're in charge, be in charge. That's what we learned in the military, and I think that's what the commander-in-chief has to do going forward.
Be involved and do not be afraid to tell the American people the reality and all its complexity of this. Paul Rykoff, founder and executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Great to see you.
Thanks for coming in. Congratulations on the new show.
Thank you very much, Paul.